said I would, and my girlfriend said she would too. I really didn't want her to, because I wasn't sure how good she actually was, and I didn't want her slowing us down, but I didn't say anything. So if you've never played it before, the game generates which one of you is Jason, and the rest of you are counselors trying to get away. If you get picked off, you might respawn as another character, Tommy if someone calls him. You can try and escape if you gather the items you need or call the police. We played 3 rounds. She was a counselor for 2 and escaped both times, and was Jason the third time and beat the rest of us. I was kind of upset because I knew she gamed, but she wasn't as into it as I was. You know? After the 3rd round, my buddy commented on how good she was. She said thanks and that she enjoyed the game. I said it felt kind of unfair that she was a ringer apparently. My buddy's girlfriend jokingly said I was just upset that I got beat by a girl. I said that wasn't it, but I didn't think I would like to play with my girlfriend again, as it hadn't been as fun as I thought it would be. My girlfriend said that was fine. She didn't like playing with sore losers anyhow. I got mad, but she thanked my buddy for inviting her and left the game. My buddy said I was being a jerk, and that I should be happy my girlfriend is a gamer like me, because girl gamers are awesome. I said maybe he was okay with his girlfriend not telling him she was really good at a game, but I wasn't. He said I was being ridiculous, and he didn't want to play with me when I was acting like this. I said whatever and left the game. Then I texted my girlfriend telling her she embarrassed me by not telling me she played, and she told me I embarrassed myself by acting the way I did. I really don't think I'm wrong for being upset that I feel like my girlfriend intentionally misled me with how good she was, but she and my buddy don't see it that way at all. Am I overreacting and being the jerk here? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Bruh, I officially don't want to live on this planet anymore. My sister calls me rude and disrespectful for sleeping. Hey, Mr. Reddit. I know you probably don't check this one as often, but I do hope you find this post and show it to YouTube someday. This is my first ever encounter with an entitled person that's been worth posting. A little bit of backstory. I joined the military back in 2014. Since then, it has been very difficult for me to go home. Up until this past Thanksgiving, I hadn't been home since 2016. Now to the story. The cast. We've got me. We've got mom, dad, entitled sister, and the nice kids. I had gotten home from a 10-hour flight. For reasons I will not go into, I had not slept for 2 days prior, and I had let my family know this before I even landed. They were all understanding. Great, I thought. My mom picked me up at the airport. We grabbed food and went home. I decided to try and stay awake with my mom until she had to go to work. This was futile, as my lack of sleep was rapidly catching up on me. My mom informed me that my sister would be over after she left. I nodded and told her I was going to bed. My mom called my sister and told me that I would be sleeping by the time she got there. I heard my mother tell her to use the back door. Fast forward about an hour and a half. My mom had left to work, and I'm fast asleep. I was starting to feel feverish because of how little sleep I had, and it was hard to fall asleep. I was awoken suddenly by loud banging at the door. I assumed this was my sister. I remembered what my mom had said and tried to go back to sleep. She walks to the bedroom window and begins to bang on this as well.
That's a Chromebook with built-in virus protection, so you can click with confidence. With no more of this, and a lot more peace of mind. Move along, viruses. Switch to built-in virus protection. Switch to Chromebook.
Very annoyed, I get up and unlock the front door and open it. I then immediately go back to bed without saying anything because I literally can barely see straight, let alone stand. About 5 minutes pass, and entitled sister enters the room. Entitled sister, why didn't you wait by the door for us? Me, because I'm tired and it's making me sick. And I came over here to see you and brought my fiance and stepkids too. Me, well, that's good. If you hang around a while, I'll be up in a few hours and we can hang out then. Entitled sister didn't hear me apparently, because I turned over to look, and there are the nice kids. Me. Oh, hello, I'm OP. Nice kids. Hello, we're insert names here. I managed to smile at them while entitled sister huffed angrily and walked out of the bedroom with the kids. I assumed she got the picture, so I rolled over and fell asleep immediately. About 10 minutes later, I'm woken up again, suddenly, from entitled sister yelling at me. Do you know how rude and disrespectful you are being? What? Me. What are you talking about? I brought everyone over to meet you, and you think it's more important to sleep? Me. I told you, I haven't slept. I don't care. You're being a child about it. Me. Okay, entitled sister. I stopped listening to her as she continued her rant. Eventually, she stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. Of course, since she had no keys, she couldn't lock the doors to the house, so I had to. My mom returned home from work late that night. When she got home, this conversation ensued. Mom, what happened with your sister today? I explained to her exactly what happened, sparing no details. She sighed. Mom, I think you should apologize to her. You're kidding right now. For sleeping? Mom, she came out here to see you. Me. And she knew I hadn't slept in 2 days. She didn't know. Me. I told her before I got here. You told her earlier before you left to work. What do you mean she didn't know? Silence. Mom. Well, she's your sister, and you should still apologize. Okay, Mom. The next morning, I messaged entitled sister, apologizing for sleeping while she was there. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. Thinking that was the end of it, I decided to let it go. I get a phone call from Dad later on in the day with a conversation that went pretty much the same as it did with my mom the previous night. At this point, I'm upset. Everyone knew I hadn't slept and needed to sleep. Yet, here I am, completely in the wrong. I've been gone for 4 years, and I'm being treated rather horribly by my own family. I later find out that entitled sister will not come to Thanksgiving unless I apologize for being a rude jerk. That pushed me over the edge, and I decide that if she wants to act like a spoiled brat like she always had, then she can. I wasn't going to apologize again for sleeping. True to her word, entitled sister did not show up for Thanksgiving. The entire week, both of my parents urged me to apologize to her and be the bigger person. I told them I had already apologized and refused to do so again. I returned home this past Sunday without seeing my sister or dad. My dad lived over an hour away from my mom's house, and due to unfortunate circumstances, was unable to make it for Thanksgiving. I wish this had a happy ending, but it never does with my sister. Should I have handled it differently? Well, who do you agree with? OP or their family? Please let us know. I'm really sorry this happened to you, OP. They really sound like a bunch of jerks. Except for her kids. They seemed alright. Chick-fil-A versus Target. So I have two stories. Right after I got hired at Chick-fil-A, I worked a few shifts, and my mom and I went to Target. Being in my red polo and dress pants, with a name tag that says Chick-fil-A, I thought I wouldn't be mistaken for an employee who would be in a t-shirt and jeans. But of course, I went in and it happened. One important detail. I'm half Hispanic, but having been born in America and having been homeschooled, I only speak Spanish to tell people that I don't know Spanish. Well, this lady walked up to me, and she just started talking. She was, however, behind me, so I assumed she was speaking to someone else until I felt a tap on my shoulder. She just started pointing at his shirt and looking really confused, and in English, I said, I don't speak Spanish. So, in very broken English, she asked me how much the shirt was, and asked about sizes, and I responded, oh, I don't work here either. She rolled her eyes and muttered as she walked off to find an actual employee. Several minutes later, I'm in a Pokemon card aisle, and these two guys start asking questions, and at this point, I'm hoping they aren't trying to talk to me, because I don't feel like explaining again that I don't work here. So they specifically get my attention, walk up and say, ma'am, where is... At which point I cut them off. Which, yes, was rude, but I'd had a long day, and I said, I don't work here. And the daughter saw my name tag and said, Mom, she works at Chick-fil-A. And her mom starts laughing and apologizing. Towards the end of my trip, the same mother and daughter duo spot me again, but I had my back to them, so they start to ask about some items until I turned around, and the mom says something about sorry and how we keep running into each other. Bonus story. My restaurant happens to be in a mall, and we deliver to other employees throughout said mall. On several occasions, I've delivered to Macy's and been stopped by people looking for various items. I deliver there so often that I know my way around pretty well, so I usually give some sort of direction. But once in a while, the person asking for help isn't satisfied with just directions. They want to be shown where everything is, and they ask about sizes. And one time, I looked at a lady and, in front of employees, I said, sorry, I don't work here. And she says, well then, why are you dressed like that? Who comes to a store dressed like an employee when they don't work there? So I showed her my name tag and said, I work at the Chick-fil-A in the food court. I'm just delivering food, ma'am. And she turned around and huffed her way to the employees who had been watching. One of them, who didn't end up helping her, gave me a look of, Sorry you have to deal with that kind of stuff. Thanks for the food, though. I've also been stopped in JCPenney and been mistaken for an employee, but no real stories there. Was told I had an 8.5 hour shift and not to leave early, so I started working for only 8.5 hours. I work as a supervisor at a manufacturing plant, and I was hired for an 8 hour shift as the nighttime supervisor. As soon as I started, they changed and said they really considered the shift to be from 11 p.m. to 7:30, so they would need it to be 8.5 hours. I'm salaried, there wasn't much I could do, and it wasn't a big deal, so I said okay. As I get into a groove working there, I find out that the second shift supervisor is a train wreck. No one would describe him to me, just saying I had to meet him. He leaves an hour or two early from his shift 2 to 3 times a week. Friday nights, he leaves the plant at 5:30 and tells them to call him if there are any problems. He calls out at a minimum once a week. It's crazy. Every time he's out, I come in at around 8 p.m. to cover the last 3 hours of his shift and my full shift. At least once a week, I just do it. I figure the company is going to deal with it, but as time passes, they obviously aren't. Structurally, the company is just as bad as him. Infighting, rivalries, backstabbing, all of that. But I stay on nights, so I don't see it much. Then Sarah starts as my boss. I actually have two bosses, which is how every successful employee works. Sarah is a nightmare. Sarah wants me to work 11 to 11 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and 11 to 10 on Friday. I dig in my heels, document like crazy, and after a couple months of harassment, HR actually backs me up, and she has to stop. But now Sarah is angry and sees me leaving at 7:15 one morning after coming in 2 hours early. She sends an email clarifying our time expectations. Second shift train wreck calls in that night, so I come in at 8, and the next morning Sarah sees me leave at 7:10. I get an email saying she's coming in early to talk to me, and when she shows up, I'm getting a formal warning for my early departures going into my personal file. I've never been written up in my life. During the meeting with HR in attendance, she said I'm expected to be there for my 8.5 hour shift. I made sure that the expectation was on record for an 8.5 hour shift, which HR documented. The next week, the second shift supervisor is out 2 days. After the first day, Sarah asks me the next morning why I didn't come in early, as there were problems on his shift. And I said I fulfilled my 8.5 hour shift, and I'm not responsible for his. They had to hire a contractor at $125 an hour to cover all of his missed time, which amounted to 19 weeks this past year. Eventually, they hired a fourth supervisor at $85K per year to cover his gaps. Sarah got demoted, and I only ever work 8.5 hours.
The radar active. You might need this.
You on this, Jack? Bye, friend.
Eyes up, love. Whoops, it easy.
8.5 hours. Don't get angry with my kid when he does what you challenged him to do. Many years ago, my oldest kid was in junior high. He took a computer class his first year in junior high. His teacher was interesting. On parent-teacher night, she announced to all the students and parents that if a kid in her class could hack the school's filters, Net Nanny, they would get an automatic A for the entire year in the class. She even had this printed up on handouts she gave us parents. My oldest kid can be a challenge. I never wanted to be one of his school teachers. He just thinks of the most random things to do and then does them without thinking of consequences. Thankfully, he's mostly grown out of this. I could tell that my son was going to take her up on this offer/challenge. He was good enough with computers that I was pretty sure he could do it. So I warned her that the school district did not want students hacking the Net Nanny, especially not my son. Who knows what he would find that I didn't want to know about? Less than 2 weeks later, I'm called up to the school on very little notice. My son was going to be expelled. That was all the info I had before I got to the school. I had a feeling it was about the computer class, so I brought in the handout the teacher gave out on parent-teacher night. I was right. He hacked the Net Nanny successfully, and because of this, the school was going to expel him permanently. I had quite the chat with the principal. He was completely shocked that the teacher had challenged the students this way, but claimed it didn't matter because the school had rules that my son should have known. He was flabbergasted when I called the superintendent of schools for our city. He was more shocked when I chatted with him on a first-name basis. It might have been a Karen thing to do, but messing with my kids brings out my mama bear. Son did not get expelled, He didn't get punished in any way, mostly because the teacher was an absolute idiot. I later learned that this was not the first time she issued this challenge or the first time a student was able to do it. She had been warned not to do it ever again, and she ignored that. They had a new teacher in under a week. Because you are just not smart enough to teach school if you openly challenge kids to hack the school's filters. Speaking of computer class, what was your favorite class you ever took in school? Please let us know. I always liked those electives where we just watched movies every day. Don't go in the house with your muddy shoes?
I have a blue child.
I've been sitting on this story for a long time, and I'd like to share it with you. Even if this seems like a minor incident, it satisfied my years long appetite for revenge. I can't list all of the things she said to me and my family, but take my word for it. This story comes from a few years back, before my grandmother was bedridden because of severe Alzheimer's. You see, after my grandfather died in the early 80s, my grandmother and her youngest sister moved in together. The youngest sister was, and is, an unpleasant woman in my humble opinion. I doubt she is well loved among the family either. My dad thinks her behavior to my grandma somewhat sped up the process of her Alzheimer's. I'm fuzzy on the details of when this took place, but my dad decided, as a family, we should take my grandma on a holiday on the Greek islands to give her some breathing room from her sister's shenanigans. We spent about a week there and went back to my grandmother's summer house. There was an infrastructural work of some kind just outside the garden gates, which meant there was a big trench with the dirt shoveled on either end. Since my dad had back problems, I had to carry a significant chunk of the suitcases. So I picked up two big suitcases in my backpack and walked up to the garden gates where my grandmother's sister greeted us. The first thing she told me, not even a proper greeting, and I quote as well as I can: "Don't walk into the house with your muddy shoes. I just swept up." We packed up and drove all day. I was exhausted and angsty, and this gave me a chance to have my small but fair revenge. So I complied. I walked up to the trench, took off my shoes, and threw them over the trench in front of her, and hopped over the trench, in my socks covered in mud, with two heavy suitcases in my hands and a bag on my back, and went inside the house. I put the luggage inside and went for a second run. All the while she watched with her mouth agape in shock. My dad questioned me before bedtime, and I told him I did what I was told. I didn't go in with my muddy shoes, just muddy socks. He agreed, but told me not to do it again. I wasn't grounded. I could tell from his voice my dad was as amused as me. Not to mention, my mother was standing beside my dad and giggling during the conversation. As for my grandmother's sister, she didn't talk to me for weeks, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Edit. Some of you guys concluded on me being a jerk on this particular occasion, and I have to agree. I'm normally a soft-spoken and respectful guy. I was raised that way. I guess I just sort of snapped after years of bottling my anger off. I can't say I'm proud of this, but I don't regret it either. I'm just proud of how I handled my blowing up moment. I blew up without even raising my voice. The event that forced my manager to respect me and stop treating me as dirt. A couple of years ago, I had a part-time job with almost full-time hours in a local restaurant who had a sister restaurant in the city, about 20 minutes drive from where our restaurant was located. Normally, you were hired for only one restaurant, but if the sister property was low on staff or needed help, then we would work in the opposite restaurant. They were run by two different family members, and both of whom had slightly different ways of doing things. One Friday evening, I come in for my 4 to close shift, normally around 11, but can differ depending on how busy or quiet we were, and was put on the cash desk. I had been working there for about 1.5 years at this stage, and I was pretty good at keeping the float. Certain amount of money always left in the till, at the correct amount, or maybe 1 to 2 euros off, which was normal and expected. Side note, I was not allowed to count the cash slash visas, etc. to check this float though. That was a manager slash supervisor's job, and was done when we come in the morning, around 6 p.m., and at close. One of the managers took an instant disliking to me due to my, at the time, bubbly, happy-go-lucky attitude, and tried to make things difficult for me. Let's call her Mary. Before 6 that day, Kay, a manager from the sister restaurant, was filling in for a supervisor and counted the cash float, which was correct. Once Mary came in, Kay hopped straight on the bus and headed home. Later that evening, once we were closed and all of our cleaning jobs were done, I was sitting down with the owner having a cup of tea while Mary was counting the float. Out of nowhere, Mary calls me over and starts berating and screaming at me that I lost 100 euros as her float was down by that much. I asked had she checked all the visa receipts, vouchers. Human error can lead to miscounting. The cash in the safe, and underneath the coin holder in the till, as Kay tends to put money under there instead of the safe. Got yelled at even more by Mary, because I know nothing and can't even manage to do one simple thing right, and got told by the owner to just head on home. No harm done, as these things happen, and to tell my coworker to double check the float in the morning as I was opening Saturday morning. Turned to Saturday morning, and once we had all our morning jobs done prior to opening, I asked my coworker was the float correct. She said she saw that Mary was down last night, but that she was correct this morning. She goes on to say that as Kate was there yesterday, she checked underneath the coins in the till, and lo and behold, there were two 50 euro notes sitting pretty. I explained the full story to a coworker and got her to ring the owner and tell him that it was correct, and we waited until Mary came back in at 6 that evening. I made a passing remark to her once she started working along the lines of, "Oh, Mary, by the way, coworker found that 100 euro that you couldn't find last night. It was underneath the coin holder in the till as Kay was here yesterday, just so you know where to look if she's done the float before you in the future." It was the most satisfying thing in my life, as, with the way I phrased it, it seemed to come across as if I was just keeping her up to date on what happened the previous night. But she and I both knew that I was subtly pointing out that had she listened to me, it would have been correct. After that, she learned that I actually pay attention to what's going on and knew how to handle. She lost her contemptuous attitude towards me. Made my life much easier for the last 1.5 years I worked there. Woman lies about being with a convention to try to get a room. Doesn't expect convention chairman to be standing right there. I worked at a hotel that had a lot of conventions. One weekend we were at capacity with no rooms to spare for one big company. Cue the entitled jerk who didn't have a reservation. I'll call her Karen. Karen asks to check in and gives me her name. I look her up, find nothing. She claims she has a reservation, but can't give me a confirmation number or any other information about it. I tell her it ain't happening. No reservation, no room. She demands the manager, where I happily smile and reply, "That's me." She scuffles off, angry. An hour or so later, my manager shows up and asks about the woman. Karen had gone to the hotel restaurant and demanded my manager to complain about me. Turns out she's with the convention. She never told me that. And there was some kind of misunderstanding with her reservation. As we're looking at the computer, Karen comes back up, smug to see my manager standing over me. She asks if we found her reservation. We say no, we're trying to locate a room for her. She starts to give us crap, saying we're unprofessional, and she'd be recommending another hotel to her company for the future. Then she goes off to find the bathroom. While she's gone, another woman comes to the front desk. She's the chairman, I can't recall her official title, of the convention group. She wanted to go over the list of people checking in that day and the rooms they are assigned. Me. Perfect timing. We have one person with your group that doesn't have a reservation. Her name is Karen. Chairman. Karen? She flips through the paperwork. I don't have anyone named Karen listed, and I know pretty much everyone. I see Karen come out of the bathroom. I wave her over, and she looks happy, like she's gotten her way. She approaches the desk. My manager. Karen, I assume you know Chairman. She's not finding your name on the list for rooms. Chairman. I'm sorry, we've never met. You're with the company? Karen's eyes got all wide. She says, "Oh, no, not that company. The other convention this weekend." Me. We only have one convention here this weekend, Karen. Knowing she's caught, Karen goes ballistic. She demands, "Are you calling me a liar?" Yeah, but we all just stand there and look at her. My manager. Karen, I'm sorry, but if you aren't with the convention, we can't offer you a room this evening. We are booked solid. Karen turns around and walks away. Doesn't say another word. I guess when you're caught lying, there really isn't much more to say. Am I the jerk for demanding my aunt buy me a new phone after my cousin broke it? I'm 16, female. So my phone used to be really bad. It was an iPhone 5S that barely worked anymore. So I spent the past few months doing anything I could to make money nonstop until I had the $1,100 I would need to get myself the iPhone 12 Pro Max. I know I don't need that. I could obviously just go with the mini and be fine. But I decided that if I was going to buy myself a new phone, that I wanted it to be as good as I could make it. So I pre-ordered it and got it all set up. It was so much of an improvement over my old phone. I feel like I did get my money's worth, even though it was quite expensive. Well, when Thanksgiving came around, my aunt decided to come over just for dinner and such. She brought my little cousin, who is 4 years old. Well, when we all sat down for dinner, guess who began begging for my phone? He saw that it was something new and wanted it. I obviously was against this idea because it was brand new and it's a 4-year-old, but she assured me it would be fine as she does this all the time. So I reluctantly handed it over and we ate our dinner. After the hour and a half it took us, this kid was nowhere to be seen. Well, after dinner I go look for him, and I find him in a guest bedroom smashing my phone on the corner of a nightstand. I took it from him, and lo and behold, the thing is destroyed. Not just the screen is cracked, but it's bent and won't turn on. Obviously, I told her that she was going to buy me a replacement or get that one fixed, and she refused. And she did that for the next 24 hours before caving and doing it. Then she told Facebook, and a few of my family are telling me I should have just accepted it and had my parents pay. Like, no, jerk. You broke it, you paid for it. What the heck? I'm being told this by a lot of adults, though, so maybe I'm wrong. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Of course not, but her aunt most definitely is. You definitely haven't seen this video yet, so please come watch it next and we'll see you when you get there. And support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And now you can have us make any kind of video for you that you'd like us to. Just come visit us on Fiverr. Link pinned in the comments below. There, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parent Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the greatest entitled parent stories we read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled parents you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that if this video gets 1,000 likes, she won't try to speak to anyone's manager for an entire week. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. And become an official member of the Re-Army today, and I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming video. r/Entitled Parent.